VocalEye Almost Live Zoom, Indian Summer Festival 2023, hosted by Amy Amantea, with special guests Pawan Deol, Anoushka Ratnarajah, and Melissa Ratcliff.
So welcome to this VocalEye Almost Live event. I'm Amy Amantea. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Associate Director here at VocalEye. I'm your host for these Almost Live events, and I'm proud to be a member of this community. And I want to send a thank you out to all of you who have made, financial contributions and testimonial contributions. And as you all know, since I've been ill this last week, who sent me lovely messages and emails. It really, really means a lot. So thank you all for all your thoughts and warm wishes, and for all that you do to help support VocalEye. It really means a lot to myself and our team. If you happen to be watching this particular event on our YouTube channel, we sincerely hope that you hover over to those like and subscribe buttons and just click on those for us. That would really help us. VocalEye is broadcasting to you all from the traditional and stolen lands of the Coast Salish peoples. That's the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations in particular. Before I share this land acknowledgement with you all, I wanted to give you an update on the loss of one of our community members. So some of you may have known Tom Teranishi. Tom Teranishi passed away on July the 17th, and Tom was much loved and much honored. Really important work that he'd done in this community. And I really wanted to share with you some perspectives that I was reading about in how some Indigenous cultures honor life and death in sort of memory of Tom. So there seems to be this general perspective that I was reading about that says, this is what it says. We understand who we are. We know where we came from. We accept and understand our destiny here on Mother Earth. We are spirit having a human experience. I thought that was really nice. Many Indigenous peoples, not all, but many, believe that at the point of death, it is said that our original mother, so that would be Mother Earth, who nourished our bodies, reclaims our physical form. Our original father, the creator, takes our spirit to return them to their place of origin. So I'm hoping that in relation to learning of the passing of Tom and how other cultures that steward these lands before settler folks arrived offer some peace to this group for folks that knew Tom. I knew Tom. And I never had a conversation with Tom that I didn't enjoy. He was joyful and pleasant, and he will be greatly missed, but his contributions to this world will be remembered by myself and by, I'm sure, many of us in our community. So fare thee well to Tom Teranishi. Welcome to this Wednesday, July the 26th, 2023. Tonight we're proud to offer you our Almost Live event number 129. This is the Indian Summer Festival highlights, and we've got a couple of special guests in the space with us. So let's give a warm welcome to Pawan and Anoushka. Wait for some squares to pop up on my screen so I'm not talking to myself. There's Pawan. And I think, there's Anoushka. Wonderful friends. Thank you so much for joining. How are folks this evening?
Happy to be here. Thank you for having us, Amy. This is Anoushka speaking.
Thanks, Anoushka. I appreciate that. Pawan, how are you this evening?
I'm on a bit of a high. We just wrapped our festival, and
Yes.
I'm feeling really excited to share moments with this group. We're always so honored and privileged to be invited into this space, and so yeah, we're tired and we need rest, but we're also over the moon excited about what we were able to do, and happy to be here to share some of that with you folks.
So let's backtrack a little bit. We may have some new folks in the space who aren't familiar with the Indian Summer Festival. Certainly what this year's festival was about in relation to past festivals. So maybe give us a bit of background.
Yeah, so Indian Summer Festival, this is our 13th year in the city, which is quite an accomplishment. We're a multi-arts festivals. And what I mean by that is that we don't focus on one particular discipline. We program literature and music and visual arts and culinary arts. And so the festival is made up of a lot of different and special pieces. And of course, we curate through a South Asian lens. So we have a predominantly South Asian team, and we're proud of that, and to bring kind of South Asian arts to the Vancouver landscape. The festival itself is quite playful. It's quite delightful. And then we're also, we can be provocative and have some hard and necessary, dialogues and debates as well. So, yeah, I mean, we're happy to be here, and we're happy to have finished our 13th edition.
What were the festival dates this year?
We programmed from July 6th to 16th, so it was 10 days around Vancouver. We found ourselves on Granville Island, at the Playhouse for a really dance piece. We were at the Roundhouse, SFU Woodward. So we've been kind of creeping back into the city. COVID, put us in one place for a long time. We started to kind of find a home on the island, but it was nice to be back in the spaces that we once were before the pandemic.
What's some of the feedback that you all have been getting after after the wrap of it all, I suppose?
I mean, it's interesting this year. So a little news to share. I've stepped into a leadership role with the organization. So I'm the new director of programming. Last year I came to you as the festival producer, and this year I've taken on a director role. Mm-hmm. And so it was a challenging year. It was a year of transition. We typically start building a festival a year out from the summer dates. And because of the transition and the new folks coming in and me taking on a leadership role, as well as Laura June, we had a shorter runway, let's say that. So we started building this thing in January, and we only had about 7 months to do it. Wow. But yeah, it's an incredible accomplishment, for sure. And what's even more endearing is the feedback we've gotten about the world and the events and the places that we created. Like, it's just been an outpouring of love and support, to be honest, which has been really, I don't want to say surprising, because but it has, in the way of, like, when change happens, people typically have feedback about that and miss old things or wonder why something's changed. And yet in this space, it feels like we've just gotten so much, like, gushy kind of love and warmth, and I'm taking it all in.
Well, and you all just said that it takes a year to plan. So even though you finished this year's festival, you don't have a heck of a lot of downtime before you're going to jump into planning next year's festival. Is that a poor assumption on my end?
Not at all, Amy. You have really hit it. I have right in front of me, I've got names of things, and I've already started visioning 2024 and themes, and really kind of starting to look at those pieces, because you're right, that's what it takes. You have a few weeks to breathe, and then you're back in it for the next festival. So yeah.
And Anoushka, what was your role within the festival?
So I was the lead curator of this year's festival. I started in January, and I actually have some history with the festival. I was the festival's administrator 10 years ago, back in 2013. When it was like a brand new baby festival. So it's been really fun to come back and get to, having experienced it as sort of part of the scrappy team at the beginning, and then being an attendee while it was growing and, really, like, coming into its own, and now to have been asked to join this amazing team at such a pivotal moment of evolution and growth and change, and in a year that was very experimental, because everyone was just really trying everything and anything, because for a lot of folks on the team, they were sort of stepping into a new kind of role, or we were trying a lot of new things. So yeah, and that was a real gift, because I felt like I was really trusted and supported, and I think the audience could feel that as well. People were really could see that the team really cared about each other, and that's always a good feeling too.
Yeah, one of the things that we're not highlighting necessarily in this space was the Not What You Expected conversation, which I had the privilege of being able to attend. And Anoushka, I mean, obviously you were there, you were moderating, but I wonder if you maybe want to just tease us with that, because as you said, it's maybe a bit of an experimental season, but there were some really important conversations happening. So if you would like to just sort of unpack what that was for us, because I have kind of a follow-up question that I'm going to tease you with.
Sure. I mean, Not What You Expected was a very experimental event in a lot of ways. It was a sort of like a panel kind of style event, with myself moderating, Anjali Appadurai, who is a climate activist, has been fighting for climate justice pretty much her whole life. And also folks might be familiar with her as someone who ran against David Eby for leadership of the BC NDP just recently. And then the other person who was on that panel was Harsha Walia, who is another powerhouse brown woman, and has done like a ton of activist work around Indigenous solidarity and climate justice, and might work for migrant people and diasporic people. She was one of, I think, the founding members of No One Is Illegal Vancouver. And yeah, so I mean, that was an event that really was like a treat for me, because I have, got to have a public conversation with two women who I really respect and admire, and who really lead with integrity in their values, and have taken flack for that or hits for that, or have experienced, real repercussions to their careers and to their safety and their mental health. But they still keep coming back to their communities and for their communities. And so, yeah, it was a conversation around how to approach leadership in a different way. And because when you enter into sort of like dominant structures, and you're someone who's been marginalized by those dominant structures, and then when you get let in the door, there's this sort of illusion that you can create change inside of, an institution that is very old and very powerful and has a lot of enablers in a lot of different ways. And yeah, how to resist that, and how to lead differently, and how to lead, from the back or the bottom, or, just thinking outside of a hierarchy, trying to flatten things out, and, know that the work that you do is teamwork, and you very much are part of a collective. And yeah, I think there are like a lot of really bad examples of leadership out there. We see them every day. And so yeah, it was a very vulnerable conversation, for all of us. But I think, this was a year where that could happen. I think because of the pandemic and how much introspection we all have had, forced upon us in our solitude. Mm-hmm. And also just such an awareness of how fragile our world is, and how connected we are with each other and how much we impact each other even without interacting. I think I hope people are more open to having like those kinds of deeper conversations. Because, we've all been through it in the last 3 years in some way, shape, or form. And yeah, it's nice to be able to like have those conversations in public.
One of the things that I was suggesting that I was going to follow up with you both on is about the leadership model in terms of what Indian Summer Festival is doing and how you are all working collaboratively. Like I kind of think of it as less of a vertical, right? Less of a vertical system, right? Where there's an executive director at the top, and then and more of a, I guess the word really is horizontal. Where are the folks that can lead in whatever capacity? So maybe you can speak to a little bit about what the leadership model has been with Indian Summer Festival, and has there been any change from last year to this year, considering the change in power, for lack of better terms?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question because we've put a lot of thought into it. My yes to the role came because we proposed a shared leadership model, which means that, that the two directors, me and Laura June, are kind of co-leading. And so it requires a lot of collaboration. And we've also introduced a collaborative curator model, which is very different for Indian Summer. In previous iterations, there's a singular artistic voice, and this year we really worked to bring a team of curators together, which includes Anoushka, to really, widen the range of what we bring to the table. And I think these are really models of leadership for the future. This is the direction of leading. We need to co-lead. I often say to my team that this hierarchy, even just saying that I'm a director, sometimes I'm really uncomfortable because in people's mind, it starts to create this hierarchy. And everything that I do through my work is to try to flatten that, to say exactly what you shared, Amy, that in all our roles that we can be leaders. And it doesn't mean like a leader sits at the top and talks down to everybody. That is just not what excites me, and it's just not the world. I don't think it's what the world needs more of, like in terms of top-down leadership. I really want to lead with my team. I want to work with incredible people who navigate the world in really beautiful and different ways. And I want to embrace all of that. And so I've been working really hard to do that. And I think it showed. I think it showed through the team and the programming. And I really feel proud about that because that was intentional.
Well, I say let's jump right on in with the first content piece that we want to share tonight, because we've got an opening image that we're going to share. I think Anoushka, are you interested in introducing this image, and we'll get maybe Rick to bring up this first image for us?
Yes, absolutely. I'm just gonna
I suppose it's image and artist, right?
Yes. Just gonna bring up
Yeah, this is a stunning piece that Anoushka will share in a moment. But every
yes.
year at Indian Summer, we choose a featured artist to create a piece of key art, which really informs the entire vision of the festival, the colors, the decor. And so, yeah, this was the piece that was created.
So this piece was created by a local artist named Tajilya Jamal, and I'll just say a little bit about them before I describe the piece. So they're a queer mixed race printmaker and comics artist based in Vancouver. And they have an emphasis on storytelling, pattern, and maximalism in their work. And they work experimentally between printmaking, animation, painting, and collage. Their work often uses patterns and iconography, drawing from their Cantonese and Muslim Indian background in tandem with images and texts that queer bodies. And they like to use book forms and print media as it's a more accessible art form for viewers and readers. And they're often collaborative in practice. And they're an amazing artist. It was a total pleasure to work with them. And they created this gorgeous piece. I just went to them with our theme, which was interdependence. And they conjured up this gorgeous image of what interdependence means to them. And would you like me to sort of describe what's happening in this image? Okay, so there are 5. There are 5 humans. They are all South Asian in their representation, but they're a very diverse group of South Asian folks. They're all sort of lounging together in this relaxed and calm space on this very beautiful red rug with gold embroidery and tassels. They're all clad in sort of different kinds of either like traditional or experimental kind of Western or traditional garb. Some of them have jewelry on, and they are very diverse in terms of their gender representation. This really looks like a queer and trans group of South Asian friends, all just sort of chilling together, relaxing. They all look really comfortable with each other. So for me, there's this kind of feeling of chosen family in this image, and sort of they're superimposed on this beautiful patterned background that's these different geometric shapes that repeat. And that's in a red, sort of orange color scheme. And sort of threading throughout the image are these beautiful threads and leaves of blue and teal kelp. And on the right, our festival slogan, I suppose, a festival for the curious mind, is written up on the right hand corner. And then in the left hand corner, there's our little Indian Summer Festival logo, which I'm not sure how I would describe it, sort of like half of a mandala kind of shape. Yeah, and that's sort of, I think, how I would describe this. Pavan, do you have anything to add?
No, that was a beautiful.
I'm curious for the both of you how the kelp fits into this image.
It sort of kind of came from actually the space and how we wanted to the space of performance works to sort of collaborate with the feeling of the poster. And we were really trying to draw on the 4 elements four elements of nature. So earth, water, fire, and air. And the inside of performance works was meant to sort of evoke this kind of feeling of an underwater cave. And for some reason, the image of kelp really was Pavan's, I think, little like brain worm that wouldn't leave. And we were just chatting about it I was chatting about it with our artist, Taj, and our designer, Rob. And so it just somehow took shape because of that collaboration. And it was also a way to bring sort of another kind of like organic earth or plant-based element into the into the image, into the piece, because as human beings, we're not isolated from nature at all. We, have become very separate from our natural environment in ways that I think are not good for our sustainability as a species. And so, in keeping with the theme, this idea of interdependence, like we're all tangled up in each other. We can't escape our connection from, the highest particle of hydrogen in the stratosphere to like the, deepest kelp forest in the ocean. Like it's all one. We are all part of one ecosystem. And so I think in just having those conversations as a team, and then between our feature artist Taj and our designer Rob, we all just sort of were charmed by this idea of the kelp, and it became this really prominent image throughout like the festival design elements in the space, on paper. Yeah, thank you so much for that question.
And then just one more quick follow-up, because you mentioned so many different artistic mediums, from printmaking to, painting to all. So what medium is this? Because it's not a photograph, right? But when you start describing people, I think, oh, it's a photograph, but it's not a photograph.
Yes. So it would have been hand drawn and then rendered digitally.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So
does it have kind of an animated feel to it, or?
Yeah, it's sort of in a graphic novel style, I would say. Like the characters' faces, there's a realism to them in terms of like the way that they're drawn, but there's also kind of a graphic novel kind of aesthetic to the way that they're drawn, I would say.
Awesome. It seems very vibrant to me in terms of the colors that you reference.
Yes, lots of bright earthy tones with that splash of blue thrown in. Yeah, some deep purples sort of reflecting in people's skin and jewelry. Yeah.
Well, the kelp is going to be a repeating graphic in tonight's presentation, because we're going to have a moving graphic of it. So it kind of looks like actual kelp under the water as it moves a little bit. When we play some songs that were featured at the festival this year. So I know we're going to introduce our first song. So wondering if we can transition into that introduction of the song series we're going to play.
Yes, absolutely. So one of our wonderful performances this year was a suite of music composed by Mohamed Assani, who is a sitarist and composer. He's trained in Indian and Pakistani classical music, as well as Western classical music and jazz. He's been twice nominated for Instrumental Artist of the Year in the Western Canadian Music Awards, so award winning. We're very proud and excited about him. And so he has written this suite of music that really deals with the themes of in nature, the places where bodies of water meet each other create these nutrient rich and unique ecosystems. And so he's kind of replicating that musically with 6 other musicians to sort of create this place where, salt water and fresh water meets, creates like this very like beautiful and unique ecosystem. And so he's bringing, his musical traditions and the musical traditions of his collaborators to create a new sort of musical ecosystem. And we'll be listening to one of those songs right now.
Yeah, I'm really excited to. I love. Well, we're going to listen to 3 songs throughout the event, so This is the first one, which is Reverie in the Sun. Am I getting that correct?
Yes.
And so we're gonna get Rick to play this song, and so the background, if folks are curious about what the background is, it is this moving life of digitally rendered sea kelp. So a lot of beautiful colors there. So Rick's gonna play the video and the song, and then we'll come back and have a little chat about it. Sound good?
Great. Sounds great.
Thank you, Amy.
All right, here we go.
Thank you, thank you. Need a little bit of star in the morning. Hello. Kata dete te kata gadi na dhatrika dete te kata gadi dhatrika dete te kata gadi dhana dhana takita takita dhatrika dete kata gadi na dha dhakra tati dhage na dhati dhage dena gena dena dhati dhage na dhati dhage dena dhate te dada tete dhate te dada tete dhate te dada tete dhage tina kina ta dhati dhage na ta dhati dhage na ta dhati dhage na dhati dhage dena gena takra dhana tak 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 takra dhana bin ta dhana dhana dhakra dhana dhakra dhana dha dhati dhage na dha dhati dhate dhate dhage na dhati dhage na tina kina tete tete dhage na dhati dhage na dha dada targir dada targir dha dada targir dada targir dha dada targir dada targir dada targir dada targir dha dada targir dada targir dha dada targir dada targir dada targir dada targir dha dada targir dada targir dha dada targir dada targir dha. Thank you, thank you. Beyoncé, Curtis, Amarji, Jeanette, Katrina, and Christian. Thank you.
I love that. And I know there's going to be more to come of that kind of musical styling. So I'm excited to experience those other two songs with the rest of this group. And we've got Pavan back, and we've got Anoushka there. I got squares. I got squares. Yay. So where was this particular concert held? Calling it a concert, maybe that's not a fair term, but what venue was it held in?
Yeah, I think it's like a tiny concert.
Yeah.
It was held at Performance Works on Grand Island. So that's a black box theater, and we were, able to really dress it up with some pretty cool lighting design. Again, that kelp came back into play with our lighting design in that space. So you have to sort of imagine the feeling of maybe being inside of like Ariel's cave in the little void, maybe without all the thingamabobs, but
and the who'sama what's it?
Yes, but yeah, sort of that feeling of being in an underwater cave, and then getting to listen to this beautiful, beautiful music,
which totally makes sense when you reminded us the top of sort of the salt water meeting the fresh water in that ecosystem, that there's kind of a cool underwater type vibe there. But maybe in some way, if I extrapolated that the audience being in that space with the musicians is kind of its own unique ecosystem. Maybe, I don't know. maybe it's a stretch too far, I don't know.
No, that's a beautiful way to put it. I mean, that's kind of the joy of having an experience around art, like communally, is so special because it is very ephemeral. It doesn't last. It's in the moment. You get to have this, these feelings together, and then you sort of like disperse, with the waves and go off on your own little current, but you got to be part of this little experience. Yeah, I think that's a perfect extrapolation.
And I wanted to start this clip with the sort of the sound of the musicians getting into place, because that makes me feel like I'm there. Yeah. There's a really other than just hitting play, which hitting play is great, right? Like we all have our favorite songs that we hit play on and that kind of thing, but there's a different feeling when you kind of feel like you're in this room with these folks and the magic's about to happen, and you start to tingle in your body, and
I always I always, whenever I go to see any kind of live music, honestly, my favorite moment is that moment where they're all tuning together and
Yes.
it sounds so beautiful and they're not even trying. And then you know
Yeah.
something glorious is about to occur. Yeah.
So our next bit of content happens to do with stand-up comedy. How do we want to preface this?
Yes, it sure does. So this year, again, going with experimentation and trying new things. Comedy had, been a part of Indian Summer Festival before. We've certainly had comedians come to the festival in previous years, and have, be a part of an event or, have their own headline show. But we never had like a lineup of comedians before. So it was really exciting to be able to do that for the first time. And, comedy from the margins has really been exploding in the last, I would say, decade. There are a lot more comics who have disabilities, who are people of color, who are trans, who are queer, who are, have traditionally been the butt of the joke. Traditional stand up can be very downward punching. But of course, the greatest comedians have always been the ones who are able to punch up and make fun of the powerful. And
isn't that interesting that that's kind of I took a comedy workshop once, like writing stand-up comedy, and the number one rule was you always punch up. Yet we see so many professional comedians picking on low status, marginalization, all sorts of experiences that are that they, they're not picking on their own privilege.
Yeah.
And so we need to re-examine how comedy looks and who it's for and all those kinds of things.
Yeah. I mean, those kinds of jokes are so lazy.
They're lazy. Yes.
They're very lazy and they're not good. So it's really exciting. It was so fun to be in a room, knowing that like the laughter wasn't going to be at your expense. There were a lot of brown people in the room that night, a lot of queer people, women, people who often are like, it's a joke that's tinged with some kind of violence towards us. So it was really awesome to be in a room and know that that wasn't going to happen, and that we were going to laugh at colonialism and white supremacy and patriarchy and misogyny and transphobia and all of these like genuinely, truly silly things. When you break them down, they are kind of funny. So we had some amazing young local comedians, including two who you're going to hear from tonight, Tin Lorica and Aiden Javed. And I think you'll hear Tin's set first.
Mm-hmm.
They're a non-binary Filipinx person. Their humor is very dry. They have a very observational style, storytelling style to their comedy. And yeah, they're very deadpan. So if you like that kind of humor, you'll enjoy them. And then our second comic will be Aiden, and I think we'll pause between them so I can say a bit about Aiden. But yeah, Tin has opened for people like Alok Ved Manan, who folks might know from the internet. And they're doing really well in their career, and it was a lot of fun to get to see them live.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm really excited. I'm a big fan of stand-up comedy, and I find the medium to be mostly fairly accessible because it's usually storytelling or jokes. Every once in a while there's a physical comedy gag, but you can kind of put the pieces together. But I think what's helpful here truly is like once we go through Tin's set, that if we have any questions about that, was there a look that I missed, or a physical joke, that we can talk through that. So it kind of makes these things a little bit easier to access.
Yeah, totally. And I can kind of describe Tin. They're short Filipinx person. They're wearing a little beanie hat, clad in sort of baggy pants and a baggy gray shirt. Very chill, relaxed, low key kind of vibe to them.
Cool. I like it already. Pawan, anything you want to add?
Just to say that comedy is it's a form of expression, and some of the content, may align and may not align. And so just to name that here, that, these are folks who have had particular life experiences, and the objective is never, to offend anyone, but to know that if it's, not working for you, that you can take a moment of pause as well.
Yeah, comedy is very subjective.
It's not PG-13, so
not PG-13. Well, we're all adults in this space.
Yes. Yep. Some risque language, folks might joke about gender and sexuality, those kinds of things. But we've all heard comics do that before. And if you have questions, we're here to answer them. So
sounds great. All right. We're going to play Tin's set, and then we're going to come back and have a little chat and set up the next one. Rick, when you're ready, hit play.
How are you doing tonight? Hi, my name is Tin. I use they, them pronouns, and that's because white people always think of the other Asian person that they know. Yeah, one time I went to the art gallery and this white lady just let me in for free because she thought I was a curator there. To be fair, I was wearing coveralls. Yeah, it's great. I'm plural. I'm interchangeable. There's perks to being an interchangeable Asian. Free admission and career change in case this doesn't work out. I love it. I am non-binary though. That's how I identify. Let me explain that experience. Non-binary, as in when a server asks soup or salad, and the answer is yes. I want the soup or salad. Non-binary, as in I failed computer science in university. That's for the dads. Thank you. Being non-binary is great. It's being able to hold and embody two seemingly opposing ideas and at the same time not have any money. Yeah, it's non-binary awareness week. I'm broke, if you want to know, be aware of that. But yeah, before I had that term non-binary, my expression of gender as you're seeing it today was actually very heavily inspired by lesbian icon and Canadian sex symbol Michael Cera. He was as a teenager, he was the peak of non-toxic masculinity. He's like a beige crayon. My beige king. That's some low stakes there. But yeah, the truth is, I feel like I kind of failed at girlhood. And I don't really have a desire to become a man in this timeline. I think the man's world is really scary. Someone's always giving you a noogie. Physically, mentally, and spiritually. Can any man confirm tonight? Thank you for going to therapy. Is it gay to go inward or something? Vibes are always off. I've tried like a variety of gender-affirming products. You know, like I used to bind to hide my breasts. I've had bump its for the big snooky hair effect. You guys remember those? Very affirming. And at one point I was trying to go for like a manic pixie dream girl thing, and I had an Emily haircut, but it was just perceived as Lord Farquaad. Did you just say you remember that? I wasn't expecting anyone to be aware of my past. Is that sperm? This is a really good segue to okay, I'm starting to tell people this. I'm getting top surgery this year at some point. But I'm starting to tell people this as well. I also want to get the bottom surgery. I want to achieve boyfriend dick. If you don't know what that is, you know, not too big, not too small. You know, that's the people's dick. This is a joke. That's too much responsibility for me. Another thing about me is that I don't know what a prime number is. This is like the remedial math class in this section of the room. Thank you for seeing me. But yeah, one of my mom's favorite things to say when I was in high school was that I was too busy being gay. You know, and she was right. You know, I was writing like an AP English essay that my teacher didn't ask for about the Myers-Briggs analysis of Holden Caulfield and the Catcher in the Rye. I argued that he was an INFJ because he's always talking about phonies. Making out with my straight girlfriend in my spare period, secretly, you know, gay shit. Yeah, and at one point I also had the Never Say Never era Justin Bieber haircut. It's lesbian shit. Yeah, as maybe you can tell, I was a teen on Tumblr in the 2010s. And like when you're not allowed to go out, like the internet is your world, you know, and the queer scene is just you. And your stupid little haircut. I tried to get on lesbians who look like justinbieber.tumblr.com, but they never accepted my submissions, and I think that's racism. Yeah. What else can I tell you? I was talking about my mom. Make some noise if you have an Asian mom or an immigrant mom. Yeah, immigrant moms, especially like for whom English is a second language, I feel like they really have a knack for putting down the things that you love. Just by saying the word for that thing twice. Like I was failing math in high school, and my mom would have attributed that to me being on the computer. She would always be like, always on the computer. What is this Neopets? You know, like when I came up to her and told her I had a girlfriend, it was lesbian. They may not have a huge English vocab, you know? It's just like a very simple and effective way to hurt you. I actually think it's like a linguistic pattern, you know, like repeating the word is like, it's for emphasis and to condescend. Okay, this is a new one, but, okay, make some noise if you have a dramatic mother. One of the other things that my mom loved to say was, like if I didn't defrost the chicken or something, was, when I die. you will know. Did anyone else hear this? Okay, thank you. Some rooms, they don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. I didn't really understand what she was on about, you know, like I didn't understand like her internal struggle. Like she like raised 3 kids in like a new country, like grappling with like English and like Canada. And yeah, I didn't understand why she would get so mad if I didn't do frosted chicken until I was 25 and living in East Van with 3 mentally ill roommates. First of all, I'm like the type of mentally ill who will do the dishes. I do not let things just soak. Guys, do that? Just fucking do the dishes. Anyway, I come home from like a hard day of work and I like go to the kitchen and I see my cast iron pan just soaking in soapy water, you know? And I'm like, I don't yell, you know, like I'm trying to break that intergenerational cycle or just write a poem about it. I don't yell at people, you know, so like inside I was fuming. I was like, when I die, they will know. My family moved here in 2005. We moved to Vancouver, and then my whole family moved to Calgary, and we've like lived here for like 18 years now. And like in that 18 years, my parents, my family have really assimilated into Canadian culture, Albertan culture specifically, right? Like they traded in their Mazda van for an F-150. They do Zumba now. You know, that's cool, that's cool. Like my sister plays golf. You know, who are these people? Okay, but like the most fucked up thing though is that my Filipino parents switched to cauliflower rice. Thank you, that is the right response. You know, and my grandfather was a rice farmer. You know, we're always talking about stop Asian hate, that the Asian hate is coming from inside the house. It's not right. You know, just to like help my dad. So like for Christmas, I'm gonna get him a set of truck nuts. If you don't know what that is a plastic pair of testicles that you put on the bumper of your vehicle, also known as a gender-affirming product, especially in Alberta. Yeah. You guys having sex? You know when you're having sex and you're like, what's the next move? Because that's what this feels like. Just pivoting. It's not related to sex at all. Do you guys have siblings? Yeah. Okay, make some noise if you like fought with your siblings growing up physically, psychologically. I love how it's always louder on that second one. You know. For context, I have 3 sisters. That's a lot of sisters to fight. But the sister that I fought with the most, her name is Cherise. She's like a few months younger than me. She's great. When our mother was giving birth to her, she accidentally ate some feces in the womb. And when she came out, she wasn't breathing. So this is in my arsenal of insults. We're just yelling at each other, I'll go eat shit and die. Oh wait, you already did. A moment of silence for that time that you died, bitch. That's a 100% true story, by the way. Like I fact checked with my mom and my sister, you know, and I have my sister's consent to tell that joke. I actually did that joke in front of my sister recently, and she loved it. It's fine. Really, she's like the one that's winning in life, you know, like she makes a living wage. She overcame death. And I do this, you know? She pays my phone bills sometimes. Yeah. But yeah, okay, maybe I guess I'll leave you this, but yeah, you know, because representation is important and stuff, I'm here tonight to tell you that I represent all of the Asians that gave up on math. I represent all the Filipinos who can't dance. And I represent all the queers without theater experience. Not even tech. Just out here being useless. You know, and the great thing about that is, like, if you're useless to people, it renders your pronouns redundant. No one has to refer to you. And I like it that way, but that's my time. Thanks so much. I'm Tin Lorica.
I love the soup and salad bit. That really made a lot of sense to me right off the top there. You know when they say, would you like soup or salad? Yes. It really was Tin was able to contextualize that really nicely, I thought. So and there was a moment I clocked this moment when Tin says, "Is that sperm?" It's because you've got that same background, right? I'm thinking of the sea kelp moving in the background, right? And so they're looking at this projection on the wall and going, "Is that sperm?" So there was a visual thing that maybe needed a little unpacking, but there you go. Yeah, I love the opportunity to see stand-up comics in their element and to see it from a group of folks that we haven't traditionally seen stand-up comedy from. How difficult or easy was it for you all to find comics that were representational of a group that we don't typically see?
You know, it's honestly not that difficult now, especially because so many young people are sort of learning their craft and perfecting their craft on social media. So many individual artists and especially comedians are able to sort of develop their skills and grow an audience that's accessible through the internet, which makes it a lot easier for like someone like me who doesn't go to, you know, stand-up shows every night. I'm not frequenting the Laugh Factory. It makes it a lot easier for someone like me to find those kinds of folks. So yeah, and I was sort of lucky because I got introduced to the kind of scene that Tin and another one of our comics, Joanne, is in through a film that I saw that they were in called Well Rounded. Through a comedy program I saw that they were in called Killjoy. And so I was able to learn about them just through doing that kind of research. And then by asking around, because Vancouver has a really thriving underground stand-up scene with like a lot of young folks of color, a lot of queer folks who are taking the stage. So, and they're not happening in like traditional comedy venues. You know, they'd probably be more part of a lineup, but it's kind of exciting that there's like spaces just for marginalized artists or comics to come together and be able to like, I don't know, like you don't have to simplify your jokes as much when the audience is like in on it, you know, and has like similar experiences. So it's pretty cool that Vancouver has a comedy scene like that right now.
I agree. So who's the next comic we're going to hear from?
Our next comic is named Aiden Javed, and she is very sarcastic. She's hilarious. She was the runner up to the 2022 BC's Funniest New Female Comic competition. And she performs both inside and outside of Vancouver. She's been at the Upper Arts Festival and has done the Ottawa Fringe. And I think you're going to enjoy her. She's very funny. She's South Asian, and you'll learn more about her through her set.
Awesome. Is there any physical description or anything that you want to provide?
Yeah, I would say that she's a brown woman. She's probably about average height. She has long, straight hair. She's wearing glasses and a dark knee-length skirt, and I believe sort of a like blue or white collared style shirt.
Okay. Awesome. I'm excited to have another laugh. Pawan, anything you want to add?
No, let's roll tape. This will be fun.
All right, here we go. Rick, when you're ready, hit play.
Can you please keep it going for all the comics that we saw tonight? Thank you. Excellent. So my name is Aiden, but for the white people in the audience, it is Aiden. It's fine. I'm used to it. For the diverse group of people, right? Everybody was talking about their identity. Mine is not a secret, right? It's pretty obvious. One look at me and you all can tell, right? We're here. I am a virgin. You guys can laugh all you want, but this also means that I am probably the only person in this room who doesn't have HPV. In terms of my original identity, though, people generally assume that I'm Indian, but I'm not. My parents are from Pakistan. Thank you. However, if by assuming that I'm Indian, you mean that you understand how India and Pakistan used to be one country, but that the British colonized the region for spices, though they still do not know how to use them. In order to solve the problem, they divided the politics by very separate languages. So you just go to push the campaign, push the whole, push the campaign, to increase division between these communities, and stop them from coming together through all colonial rule, resulting in one of the bloodiest partitions in human history, 22 union power states, which can now destroy the future of 1.5 billion people in South Asia in the blink of an eye. Then, yes. I guess I'm Indian. But I don't want to give the impression that because of this historical trauma, I hate white people. No. There are so many things about white people culture that I love. Backstreet Boys, scented candles, and Lunchables. You guys remember Lunchables, right? When I was a kid, I used to be so jealous of my white friends, right, who would bring Lunchables to school every day in their cute little shiny packaging. And there I was, with my homemade lunches, because my parents were not divorced. As an adult, though, I have a completely different set of problems. The thing that I hate the most about being an adult is cleaning. Specifically, you know when you have to do that deep cleaning, you have to vacuum the carpets, clean the drapes, you have to clean the tiles of your washroom, like get all that grime out. Sometimes you have to use bleach, and then the stench of the bleach doesn't leave your hands for days. I hate it so much. I think that's the only reason I can never commit murder. So much cleanup. Speaking of murder, I am on dating apps. Because I'm a virgin, not an incel. Important distinction. it to our, Eurocentric beauty standard that we still very much glorify, fair skin, blonde hair, blue eyes. When I read that, kind of depressing, like how this kind of like overt racism is still there. But after reading that, I realized, who else really matches with white women a lot? Serial killers. Every true crime documentary, who is the victim? It is always a white woman. So I might not be getting that many matches on dating apps, but I'm also not matching with serial killers. I am very happy with my dark skin now. However, where I live, it's mostly a white region, so I do end up matching with white guys on dating apps. And dating white guys is an extreme sport. I tell you what, so first of all, dating in general, like a lot of people have talked about this, that Hollywood has destroyed our ideas of dating and relationships, right? Because you look at all these movies, Love Actually, The Notebook, A Walk to Remember, and you think to yourself like, that is so unrealistic. Like that's never gonna happen in real life. Guys, I am a Bollywood fan. So Bollywood looks at Hollywood and goes, oh, you think that's unrealistic? Hold my child. I'm gonna do the same, but with 100 backup dancers. So now, when I'm on a date with a white guy, I am judging in the first 15 minutes. Like, can he bust out some of those choreographed Bollywood moves that are wedding? And the answer is almost always a no. The second reason I don't think it's ever going to work out is that, let's say, we decide that we get married. Like, my parents want a full, 5 to 7 day humongous brown wedding. And then if his parents want a white wedding as well, that would be 2 different wedding dresses, 2 different catering orders, 2 different priests. I don't think it's even about race anymore. I just don't think marrying a white guy is a good economic decision. It's a lot of money. And the third reason it's never going to work out is because I have seen Get Out. I am currently doing my PhD in political science. Yes, thank you. It is the longest relationship I've ever had. And my PhD research is focused on studying extremism. And I study 3 different types of extremism, like religious extremist, right-wing extremist, and Game of Thrones fans. By the way, right-wing extremism is just a fancy academic way of saying white people complaints. And a lot of these complaints are about minorities, like, we are letting too many of them in. Their birth rate is so high. Yes, things were bad for minorities at one time, but they're not anymore. Get over it. So every time I'm researching these people, I'm looking at their online profiles and what else they're posting. These are the same people who are still not over the season 8 ending of Game of Thrones. So you tell me who's the real snowflake in this situation? And I think a lot of people have already talked about it, that immigrants are not taking people's job because Canadian government often actually doesn't recognize immigrant credentials, right? So they can be doctors, lawyers, very well educated in their home country, but when they end up coming here, they are actually doing minimum wage jobs. You know who is taking your jobs? Children of immigrants. You're not going to recognize our parents' credentials? We are taking all the top spots in doctor, lawyer, engineering, and that is what a level playing field looks like. Another thing I learned while doing my research is that oftentimes dictatorships, they say that they want to control terrorism, but in that name, what they want to do is just collect people's personal information. One way they do it is by just collecting people's social media data. And one such country is Russia, which recently actually asked Tinder to hand over user data to the Russian government. I mean, what is Putin thinking? That people are going to plan a revolution against him by engaging in a constant loop of hey, winky face? But can you imagine if the Canadian government did the same what do you think will happen? I'll give you two options and then we'll do a public vote. Do you think it will stop men from sending pictures of certain anatomical body parts? Or do you think it will encourage them more because they will think, oh my God, the Prime Minister might look at it. Clap if you vote for option 1. Do you think it will stop men? No? Clap if you think vote for option 2. What do you think? Option 2 it is. Do you guys like avocados? Is this an avocado crowd? Yes? Okay. So apparently, I did not know this, but I learned recently that the fat in avocado is called good fat. Like it's supposed to be really good for you, health-wise. But when I read that the first time, I'm like, why? What makes it good? Like, does it give to charity? Does it vote? Maybe it doesn't ghost you after a date. And it's actually true, by the way, this is not a joke, that avocado trade from Mexico to US is so successful that some of the drug cartels now are getting out of drug business and into avocado business. So this is what makes avocado so good. Like it's literally like you diversifying drug cartel economy away from drugs. But I wanted to know, okay, if avocado is such a good fat, what would be like a comparable bad fat, right? I need to know extremes on both sides. And I have found the answer. And this is some academic peer-reviewed research I'm going to share with you. And the answer is bacon. And I tell you why, before anybody gets really angry. Okay, first of all, almost 2 billion people around the world, if you combine the Muslim and Jewish population, they don't eat it. So it's not a very inclusive fat. Second, it almost gaslights you because if you don't eat bacon, everybody around you makes you question your version of reality like, oh my God, how can you not eat bacon? It's so crispy and moist and the best thing to ever happen, and I don't need that kind of emotional abuse in my life. Third, I find bacon to be very two-faced. Because in the US it's called bacon, but in Canada it's called Canadian bacon, which is technically ham, which makes me question, how many crimes is this bacon committing that it has to change identities across borders? All this to say, guys, what I'm actually trying to say is, say no to bacon and convert to Islam. Thank you, everyone.
Couple of really funny human beings there. So how many stand-up comics were there total for the entire evening's event? Because we just saw 2.
Yeah, there were 5. So if you're interested in learning about any of the other comics, their names are Sasha Mark, Savannah Erasmus, and Joanne Sung. And Sung is spelled Tsung. And they're all hilarious. You can definitely find their content online for sure.
Awesome. So we're gonna go back and listen to another one of these lovely song pieces that I'm so excited about. So do we want to introduce Moonrise? Does one of you want to introduce the song Moonrise?
Sure. Yeah. So this is another song out of the Waters Meet Suite. And yeah, I don't know what else to tell you about it, but afterwards I can tell you about some of the other musicians that joined Mohamed on stage that evening.
That sounds great. Yeah. Awesome. So we're going to bring up that kelp graphic again if anybody's curious about what's on their screen, and listen to Moonrise. So Rick, when you're ready, go ahead and hit play.
Okay. All yours, Katrina.
Oh, it's so beautiful to listen to.
Yeah, they really are so talented. Mohamed has been working with all of these musicians, some for many years and some are newer collaborators. So at the beginning of the clip, when he said, it's all you, Katrina, that he was speaking to one of the three string players, Katrina Chitty, and she's a new collaborator with that group. And as you could hear, obviously an extremely talented musician. The other two string players are Jeanette Bernal Singh, who is a longtime collaborator of Mohamed's, and Christian Marcos, who was playing the cello. Jeanette was playing a violin as well, and Christian was playing the cello. And the other folks in the ensemble are Curtis Andrews, who is a percussionist, playing many different drums. Jean-Say Ledouget, who is playing the bass, and Amarjit Singh, who's playing the tablas, which are two sort of small hand-played drums. Yeah, so those are all of the musicians. They all have their own rich careers on their own. Some of them play in the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra. Many of them have played all over the world with many other musicians. But they very clearly have a special energy when they come together.
When they come together, so I'm wondering if you have any insights on the creative practice of this group, whether, okay, so I know that some musicians that are familiar with each other, they get together and they just like do an improvisational almost jam session, or they come together and they write something in advance and they play a piece that's they practice together for a long time. What is the style that's being implemented here? Do we know?
Yeah, I think so. This suite of music was very much led by Mohamed, so it was composed by him. But I think that all of the musicians that he worked with on this piece were all people he had in mind when he was composing the suite. That's how I remember it when I was talking to him about it. And so it was very like his own imagination, but it was almost as if his collaborators were with him as he was creating, because he had such a strong feeling about who he wanted to work with. And I'm sure that there were like improvisational or, collaborative moments when, they were first all in a room together. Yeah, by this point, they've all just been rehearsing quite a few times together, and you can sort of feel the synergy of that.
Very much so. And we're going to, obviously, through the course of this evening, we'll have experienced 3 in total pieces from this suite. Do you have any concept of how many pieces were played on the night?
Oh, I'm trying to remember. I want to say that there were 7 individual songs.
Yeah, I was going to say 6 to 7.
Yeah.
And then would they chit chat in between the songs? Is that sort of how the vibe of the evening was like?
Yeah, it was very special. It was a very supportive audience. I mean, Mohamed has been like a long time artist featured at the festival, so he has quite a loyal following and fan base of his own that he brings to the festival, but also of people who had encountered his work and had seen him play with other folks like Jeanette or Curtis or Christian before. So there was kind of a sense of like playing to family almost, to friends and family in the room. So there was a really lovely feeling of almost being in their rehearsal space or their living room. It was there was a really sweet moment where Mohamed called out to our designer, who had also designed one of the covers for one of his albums, and so he, like, told him to stand up, and everybody gave him a little bit of round of applause. So it was a very, like, generous, warm evening, and yeah, so it kind of, I guess the closest thing I could compare it to is like the feeling of a tiny desk concert. If anyone has seen any of those or heard any of those on YouTube, yeah, it felt like, you get to watch your extremely talented friends show off for you. And yeah, it was really a delight.
Well, it's a real delight to listen to, so I can't imagine what it would have been like to have been there in person in the room with all the vibing going on. It would have been really cool.
Yeah.
So we've got a couple of artworks to transition into. So why don't you introduce the artist to us in the exhibition, because I think it's really, really cool. And this one was at the Roundhouse, I think, right?
Yeah, exactly. So part of what Indian Summer tries to highlight is visual arts. So as part of the multi-artness of the festival, visual arts has been kind of an area that yeah, we like to focus on. So what we're going to share with you are a couple of pieces from an exhibit called The Vessel with Two Mouths. And so this was this was an exhibit that we had up at the Roundhouse, and it features one of the country's leading multimedia artists named Rajni Perera. So Rajni is actually based in Toronto, and this was Rajni's debut in Vancouver, which was amazing. The first time to have her work featured here. And it was actually a brand new body of work that came from a residency that she did in her home country of Sri Lanka. So she's situated in Toronto, went back to Sri Lanka, had an incredible experience, and these pieces are what came out of that. And a lot of the themes that Rajni explores are around her longing for home, an ancestral home, if you will. And so some of that comes up in these incredible pieces. And I should add, Amy, that I had never seen the back end of fine art in terms of transporting art from a gallery space in Toronto to here. And let me tell you, I learned a lot. And I did not know what I had said yes to, and the whole world of transporting these incredible, like 16 by 9 feet tapestries that needed to be in a particular temperature and handled in a particular way and transported by truck across the country. It was a world, let me tell you.
I can only imagine, and I have to say that I'm personally a bit conflicted by this kind of thing, and this actually started a conversation in my house the other day when they were talking on the news about the Summer Olympics coming up in Paris, and I thought, oh my gosh, look at, in a climate crisis where we will ship things across countries and artists will travel, and I'm one of them. I traveled recently to do it, right? As much as I want that here and I want to go do these things, the other part of me is like, oh, how do I offset that carbon footprint? Right. So I'm sure that there was a definite impact to the planet. Is there any way that you all from Indian Summer Festival are thinking about how to offset that carbon footprint?
Absolutely. It's definitely top of mind, especially after the pandemic, when you realize so much of what we can do can be done without flying folks. And so for instance, this year, I think, we only had a handful of artists that flew in. And I think as like the festival kind of evolves and grows, it's definitely something to consider of like how how do you bring art to the city and also, take, the climate into consideration? I mean, it's interesting because a lot of Rajni's themes are around climate justice. There's other, works that she's had, and she's very much about, she's not really like that fine art type person. She wanted, I think when galleries get involved, there's a certain thing that happens with people's art. And yet when you hear her speak, you'll realize she's just from the suburbs and wants to make art. And this whole world of like fine art was actually not what she intended to do. And she has herself quite a few, conflicts with that, of like, how do you navigate those two worlds of like people wanting to buy your works for like hundreds and thousands of dollars, but also just being somebody who wants to give back to local artists, young artists. She grew up, she spent a lot of time in the suburbs of Toronto. And how does she work in those spaces to bring art to those streets rather than trying to get work into galleries? So yeah, it's definitely a point of interest.
Yeah, it's a big conversation. There's no doubt about it. But what we can handle within our little context of the world here, right, is to talk a bit about these kinds of tapestries, because so how many of them were displayed at the Roundhouse?
So there were 4 large tapestries and a few sculptural pieces, but I'm going to share or talk more about the 2 kind of larger tapestry pieces. The first one was named The Dream.
Do you want us to bring that image up now?
Yeah, let's look at it
okay.
together. So this was a 16 by 9 foot tapestry that was hung in curvature, like kind of in a round at the Roundhouse. It was massive. And I'll share a little bit about what it looks like. So on one side it's squared off, and the other was actually rounded, which gave it a very kind of special kind of canvas. Her inspiration.
Sorry, Pawan, just before you go on, if you can share some scale with me, right? Because from what I'm sort of making out here, if I were to say like floor to ceiling height, right?
So
you can give us measurements, and so then I have to unpack those measurements, right?
Yeah. So are you asking like scale, like how can I,
like, is it the size of a city bus, for example, or smaller?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Okay, so this is a huge piece of work. And then when you talk about the curvature, are we talking about like how maybe the crux of your arm bends inside your elbow, like a gentle curve?
No, it's actually almost like I'd say more of like half a circle. So
okay.
You can't really tell in this photo, but yeah, it's kind of hanging in a way that it is quite curved. It's not, yeah.
Awesome. Okay, that really helps when I'm imagining myself in a space in front of a piece of work.
Yeah,
how large it is compared to like the average human size.
Totally. Yeah, so you're definitely like looking up and side to side. It's almost like you can't take it in if you're right up to it.
Okay.
Yeah, quite large.
And the medium is this paint on fabric or?
Yeah, so a lot of acrylic paints. And as you get closer, you actually notice a bit of detail work. So some of the kind of what I would describe as like snake skin pattern on the back of the figure's leg, and also in the kind of around the head, was actually like raised, and like it wasn't flat. And so there were like little kind of pieces of materials that were used to kind of create a bit of elevation in that. And so it had a bit of up and down moments. It wasn't just flat paint.
Right.
There was little moments of, I guess, jewels and pieces that were raised on the canvas surface. Yeah. And I mean, I would describe this as a human-ish figure, like a form that has, 2 legs, 2 arms, a torso and a head, and it's positioned horizontally, like it's laying horizontally in what I would say is like a fetal position. And it's really interesting in the torso area. So that middle space there where you see a figure, and we'll share a clip of Rajni actually speaking about this piece, and she refers to it as like a witch doctor figure, with a smudge stick that's held in his mouth. And so you can make a bit of that, and there's a bit of smoke coming off the edges of that smudge stick. Yeah, and so Rajni will talk about this piece in the clip and her sense of home, and also a lot of her themes explored worlds. So really like toggling between spirit world and real world, and sort of a portal of like where you can be and where you are. And she gets a lot of inspiration from science fiction and also her homeland, where there is a lot of folklore around spirit world. And so she captures some of that in this piece.
Yeah, I'm trying to put the visuals together because it's quite abstract-y feeling to me.
Yeah.
Even though you say that you can sort of make out the shape of a human body, it almost feels like it's segmented. So the head or really the eyes are just two really large circles.
Yeah.
And then it transitions into a really large mouth. And then something that I think looks like, if y'all can imagine, if you're in the fetal position and this is a horizontal tapestry, that the butt is like towards the ceiling and the knees are towards the floor.
Yeah.
Kind of in a way. So it's almost like it would be like you would be laying on the floor in a way. But there's a lot of very abstract imagery here in what I can make out anyways.
Absolutely. I would definitely agree with you there. Yeah, it's interesting when you look at a piece of art, and when two people look at a piece of art, like how the interpretation is so varied and also so beautiful in its difference. Because I definitely agree with you that there's some real abstract pieces here, and if you want to create a narrative around the form, you can, or you can just let it be as well, which is the beauty of art.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
just trying to share with folks what it could look like so that they could paint a picture in their mind. Because essentially with abstract stuff, it's so difficult because everybody sees something a little bit different, but there's definitely kind of a human body form there, although it feels compartmentalized to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I like the word that you use, segmented. I feel that too.
What, from your visual intake of this, Pawan, what does it evoke in you as your feeling or your understanding of the work?
Yeah, this was a really powerful piece to take in. For me, it evoked a feminine energy meeting a spiritual energy. And so that to me felt like a really powerful intersection. I really like the abstract in the form, and I also, when she talked about it, it really gave it a little bit more of a maybe concept, which I quite enjoyed, because when I first saw it, I think I just kind of took it in at a surface level. But for me, it's that intersection, and also just the toggling between human and spirit world. I feel that really resonates with me in this piece.
Awesome.
Yeah. Do we want to roll the clip? Do we have it ready, or?
Well, we were going to do the two images together and then roll the clip, but if you think otherwise.
We can talk about the second one. I think the clip might have more to do with this piece, but happy to go to second if that's easier. I'm not sure if Rick is ready.
Rick is always ready and standing by. So this little audio clip, do you want to just wet our lips about what it is that we're going to listen to in this audio clip?
Yeah, so a part of the exhibit was having a kind of an artist in conversation with Rajni Perera. So in this clip, you'll see Rajni Perera seated across from Devyani Saltzman, who was one of the another curator who joined the festival. And Rajni is seated on a stage. She's wearing a really long brown maxi dress with some chunky orange platform shoes. And Devyani is sitting across with a blue cardigan. And I think she's wearing like a black and white short. And so this is an excerpt from a longer conversation that they had about Rajni's upbringing, her other art, and then also this particular exhibit, The Vessel with Two Mouths. And she speaks to this piece, which is named The Dream.
Awesome. All right, let's have a little listen to the artist.
So yeah, like just being strategic with, but also with my energy.
No, that gives
and
a great
protecting
insight.
my efforts. Yeah.
As you should.
Yeah.
Question before you will all come see after this, which is at the Roundhouse for the next week, which is your newest body of work, The Vessel with Two Mouths. This work came from a residency you did with your 11-year-old Sayuri in Sri Lanka last year. Yeah. This is, let's find Sayuri. Where are you? There you are.
There's us, and we went to a paddy field.
Paddy field in Candy.
Yeah.
Working on this. I just wanted to briefly have you be able to talk about this before people go and see the work at the Roundhouse.
Yeah.
Because in a way, you've said that this is actually a return to your home country for the first time in your practice.
Yeah. I mean, I would say it's hard to have a home country when you've lived all over the world, but I'm feeling closer than ever to the place where I was born, for sure, and starting to go back and make more friends. Like when you go back home to where you came from in a special way, which is you don't go with your family, you just go and you maybe chill and do some work with someone or something like that. Then these friends start showing up, like cool people start showing up, like, hey Rajni, saw you on Instagram, pretty cool paintings there, whatever. You start, building a little community and like meeting a curator, meeting people doing cool stuff. So that's what's starting to happen to me as I go back home to Sri Lanka. So it's becoming my home in a new, strange way. My parents cannot relate to the way that I am becoming friends with my country again. I also have hope for my severely economically and politically disturbed country. So my hopefulness is very annoying for a lot of people. My parents being at the top of the list there. They're really sick of it. It's like, no, we can change it. It's going to be better. So this is just to address my mood of going back home now, right? And then starting to become really interested in our folkloric practices. So there were traces of Yakutovil or like Sunni, or it's kind of witch doctoring practices that are more practiced in rural areas. And growing up with traces of it all around the place, right? But never really seeing a ritual. And because I'm a full-on city girl, like born in Colombo, and both of my parents are also born in Colombo, but having, of course, our roots from rural areas, and seeing a book about Tovil in a store, bringing it, and my mom was with me at the time, bringing it home and being like, Mom, what's Tovil? And showing her this book, and this is probably 5 years ago. And I'm looking through it, and I'm like, look, have you seen any of this? She's like, here and there, but that's not really for us. That's for like uneducated people. They've never been to university. Uneducated people in rural area, in the what did she call it? The outback. And I was like, oh, that's so weird, because we're not that far removed from like people who lived in the outback, like literally 2 generations ago. We're from the countryside.
Tell us who this is. This is
a Yakutovil practitioner.
No, behind us. This He's got a smudge in his.
Yeah. So this is a witch doctor, Yakutoville practitioner. So this is someone who will be communicating between the spirit world and the real world. And a lot of times it's exorcisms. And I really like that this practice represents a portal between what you can see and what you cannot see. And it's not generally practiced in a city, but it represents all of these really cool kind of sci-fi fantastic tropes, including multi-dimensionality and like transporting between one realm and another, which these practitioners represent. But the way that they bring these ideas into fruition to an audience is through theater. So they'll put together all these beautiful costumes, and there's so many characters. Some of them are super racist. So it's like a caricature of Portuguese colonizers, of like white people, ha ha ha, like they make their faces like super exaggerated and different from Sri Lankan faces. And all of the, like, Sri Lanka is said to house upwards of, I think it's 70,000 specific gods and demons and forest spirits. All of them are prayed to and respected in different ways, treated in different ways by Toville and Sanni. So they're all represented in this practice, like super diverse and beautiful. And there's music, there's like comedy, there's like all sorts of stuff that happens in Toville that for me, I just really love that this is a expression of a portal to rid people of illness, sickness, illness, sort of like maladies like PMS for women, and like whatever else, all sorts of things that are attributed to spirits who live in the forest and are kind of bothering us. It's like they're bothering you, so let's come and do this thing. We're going to distract them or just convince them, like seduce them with something else, like get them away from the victim somehow. So yeah, I really love this practice. So I wanted to feature sort of like scenes from it, from different publications or stories or like feelings I've had about it in this body of work. Yeah.
I don't think I think I'm being told we don't have time for anything else, but I want to ask you, I am going to ask the last question, sorry. And you must come and see the work. On this side is Kavuni's Curse. Yeah. And it's about a demon. It's about Ravan and the Ramayan. And I'm just curious, monsters are always in your work?
Yeah, I love
just
monsters.
Let's end on your fascination with monsters and then open it up to the audience.
Yeah, I really love monsters because, I mean, there was a time when I was a monster because I don't come from here. So there's that. That's a very easy answer for that. But then the idea of the monster represents a lot of things. Like the idea of the monster is a projection of like so many facets of human existence that we're projecting onto some other idea that we're going to love or be afraid of or think it's cute or whatever. And they're also such a
the reactive soulless pack for ghosts. And this skin is pretty crazy. This has got to be one of the coolest skins we have in Modern Warfare 2. Like his head is not even...
Okay, a little bit of audio interference there at the end. I don't know if somebody's microphone came open or not, but we've stopped the clip, and so Pawan, you can come back on in. So this is some real good reference here about the fact that there's a lot of monsters in the work and sort of a witch doctor feel. So that intersection of spirituality that you were talking about seems to sort of come through really powerfully. There's a second image, so a second tapestry that we have a photo of, and I guess we'll get Rick to bring that up now. And maybe we can get you to describe that one when it's up.
Mm-hmm.
We may have to zoom in on this a little bit because it's
a bit distant.
A little far away. What is it? When you think of the phrasing "a vessel with two mouths," what does that evoke for you, Pawan? Because it's an interesting name of an exhibition.
Yeah, it is quite a unique name. For me, the way I see it, or how I felt it, was, when a vessel you know, if it has two mouths, it's like things are coming in and going. And so it's like that portal space that Rajni often reflects and refers back to. And so, you know, typically a vessel just would have a singular opening. And so the fact that she's naming that it has two for me is like, it's like a portal. It's like things can come in and out, and it's a through way rather than just a one way. And to me, that feels like indicative of these worlds that she's toggling between.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So what's this tapestry we have in front of us this time?
Yeah, so this tapestry is named Our Math as Old as Time. And it's a profile of a woman, a matriarch-like figure, with her eyes closed, you know, gray hair sort of hanging past her shoulders. To me, it feels like she's very much at peace. You know, there's a real calm, a sense of calm that this evokes. And then there's this jewelry piece, this what feels like is an anklet or a golden crown-like halo, but it's around her head and it's not atop her head. And it's got golden embellishments on it. And it's a real soothing piece for me. It's interesting, the adornment on the halo as well. Like at the end, you can see the little kind of loop on the end of the anklet with this necklace type piece hanging. There's an element of sacredness for me here. There's an element of ritual and adornment. Rajni is really exploring, you know, homeland and motherland and traditional wisdom with this body of work. And I feel like that comes through. And again, in a different way, we're also, to me, it feels like we're also transported between two worlds here. You know, you have this human form of a person, but there seem to be in what I could say is maybe a spiritual world with this piece around their head. And so to me, it evokes similar feelings and themes, interestingly, even though both pieces are so different in their ways.
Yeah, this figure of this matriarch, as you referred to her, is in profile. So that means that we're looking at her from a side view. So as opposed to seeing somebody's nose and their face, you're seeing their ear and their cheek and the side of their face.
Yeah.
But she also seems to be painted very, very realistically, as opposed to the abstract sort of segmented human body parts. This is quite realistic in its rendering of a matriarch figure.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting how those two works are part of the same body of work. And yet, you know, there's themes here that you can tease out that are quite similar. But yeah, this is a very realistic depiction, you know, of a human form.
And she seems to be wearing a black top, maybe with white polka dots.
Yeah, there's a little kind of bejeweled, almost like star-like pattern. It's like a star with four corners, and that print runs across the bodice and on the black. And so I almost, yeah, it's an interesting pattern choice for sure.
And then just in terms of the scale of this one, what's the size of this tapestry? Because it's vertical, right? So it's not horizontal and sort of wrapping. I think it's vertical from ceiling to floor.
Exactly, yeah. And
would you give that a kind of a height variation for me? Like 3 average size people tall, or we don't have a person in here to reference how tall it is.
Yeah, my head. So yeah, it runs about 16 feet. So I'd say 6'12", about 3 6-foot humans maybe.
Yeah. So 16 feet. A story is about 10 feet. So it's like a story and a half.
Yeah. So
your
again,
average, your average apartment has a 10-foot ceiling.
Yeah, quite large in scale. Again, it's much more narrower than the other piece, but again, it's a piece if you were kind of in front of, you'd be kind of looking in and taking in.
And you were mentioning a little bit about the fact that these two pieces are so different from each other, but there are a couple of themes that sort of bounce back and forth. What are those themes for you when you witness these two pieces?
Yeah, I think so. Rajni takes a lot of inspiration from science fiction, as we heard in the clip, and I found that to be interesting. I'm not actually a sci-fi person myself, but I heard her explain it as though, you know, there's a multidimensionality to the works, and she really, I think, going home, having a moment in the country she was born in, and reorienting to the folklore and the rituals and the traditions of that land, and then putting that inspiration into these pieces was quite interesting, because for me the standout is always the multiple worlds that are, you know, as she describes, are seen and unseen. So she's exploring many worlds, and I really take that away from this piece as well as that last piece.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Have these pieces now been shipped back to Ontario?
Well, I mean, they haven't actually. I think they're sitting in a truck somewhere. So the beauty of it is that the part that we did conserve on is that I made sure that the shipment wasn't just for this art alone, that there were multiple other artworks and things going together, and so it's waiting somewhere to be taken back to a gallery space in Toronto. So
okay,
yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, very cool. Sounds like a really interesting exhibition. And it's almost too bad, right? When you think about the festival, the Indian Summer Festival running from the 6th to the 16th of July, that there's only really 10 days. You know, when you have something like this in town, you kind of want it to be here for like 3 months, you know?
Yeah, I actually tried really hard to get the time that it was put up to be extended, but we come up against summer in the city and venue availability, and so then it just got incredibly complicated. But I tried very hard to have this here for an extended period of time, because it was quite stunning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not every day that you see sort of modern day tapestry, right? Like when I think of tapestries, I think of, I don't know, like colonial castles in Paris or whatever, right? Like it's the brick castle idea. That's kind of where my mind goes first. That all has to do with your educational upbringing, of course. When you learn what tapestries are and where they're from, that there's a colonial lens there, right? But it's just not the kind of art form that you may typically see in a modern day gallery.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, because I can't imagine the studio space that the artist needs to have in order to work on pieces of this scale, and the time it takes to create one piece.
Yeah, I can't imagine either. I'm sure it's probably, there were some photos that Rajni shared on Instagram of her immersed in the work, and yeah, you're right. It was quite a wide warehousey type space.
It's like painting a mural. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, we're gonna transition into our last song for the evening. Are we bringing Anoushka back into the space to talk about this one, or are you talking about this one, Pawan?
I think we can launch into it. The piece is called Serendipity. Again, keep your ears locked into the various instruments that are playing, and it is very much a East-West fusion. You know, Mohamed is very much about worlds merging, and you can definitely hear that in the pieces with the traditional drums as well as the, you know, Western stringed instruments. So yeah, definitely try to hear all the instruments as you listen.
Awesome. All right. Well, Rick, when you're ready, hit play on Serendipity, and just so that folks are reminded, we have those lovely sea kelp video playing in the background, if you're curious what your visuals are.
I'm not going to say anything.
Yeah, you're right. You can hear a little bit more of a Western vibe there. It's very interesting. And thanks for like tweaking our or peeking our ears to that, because it's subtle.
It very much is. I think
Yeah.
when all the sounds come together, you can just hear it as one. But if you start to listen for the 7 musicians, you really can start to
Yeah.
to envision what's the magic that's happening. Like it's quite incredible.
This has been a really awesome highlights of what's happened at the festival. If we've got Anoushka, we can bring Anoushka back into the space, because I'd love to just transition to talking with our audience and see if there are any questions from folks in the room tonight. If they have questions about anything they heard or listened to or saw, or questions about the festival, or if you just have any comments or things that resonated that you want to share with our two guests, the space is open. And I'll prime you all that the lovely folks at the Indian Summer Festival will be giving away 2 CDs this evening of some of this beautiful music. Maybe you want to set us up with that so we can just keep people teased for the prize draw coming up?
Sure. Actually, I feel like Melissa on our end probably knows more about it than I do.
Oh, we can bring Melissa in if she's standing by.
Is it okay to?
And she wants to be brought in.
Got it. Sorry.
I mean, what I can
I
say
am
is that we
indeed.
have 2 CDs that have been shared with us from Mohamed Assani, who is the composer and the sitarist in the musical kind of interludes that you've heard. And yeah, that it features everything that you heard today and more.
One of them is going to be basically kind of the album that is this collaboration, and then he has another album which is an earlier album which is more traditional Indian classical, and he has also donated an LP if there's anybody who is an audiophile.
I think we're gonna hang on to that LP for our fundraising event.
Never mind. That's right. Sorry, that was going to the
So
fundraiser.
folks who are local, well, because LPs are hard to ship, and we didn't want to worry about breaking them. But our fundraiser, VocalEye fundraiser, coming up on November the 4th, will feature a lovely donation from the Indian Summer Festival with this LP. So if there's an audiophile, you got to come to the fundraiser.
Exactly.
But the 2 CDs are certainly going to be drawn this evening, so I hope folks stick around. In the meantime, I'll just love to ask a few questions. I mean, Melissa, thank you for popping into the space. I know you were just going to sort of hide in the background for a little bit, but what was your role in the festival, and what was this year like for you?
Oh, I joke that I do all the not fun, not sexy stuff. So I get us permits and insurance and contracts and
but all super important.
It is all important. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's unimportant. It is not neither fun nor sexy, but it is very important. So no one comes into the festival door and say, "Oh my God, I love your permits." So but yeah, so I do the much less creative side that is very important, but nobody sees. So,
and the permit part, I mean, people may be like questioning what you need a permit for. Like, don't you just rent a space and that's the end of it? Or
for stuff like that, yes. If you have a bar, you will need a liquor permit. If you do like a 50-50 draw, you need a gaming permit. If you want to do stuff outside, that's other permits. We had some activations on the Granville Island Public Market. When we had the Rajni exhibition at Roundhouse, we had to insure the entirety of the collection, which is worth getting close to $250,000. So, and yeah, so there's all these little things that are involved. And then the Playhouse stuff was run at a Vancouver Civic Theater, so they had to get insurance, or we had to add them to our insurance, and then there's all of these contracts between them and all of this really not interesting stuff that I'm sure no one is curious
how often
about.
what's interesting is like we put this all in place, right? This is like you have health insurance and you hope you never need to use it, right?
Exactly.
How often do you actually have to use it? Knock on anything that's wood around you, right? But like
we've had no claims on our insurance, touch wood.
Yeah.
We do occasionally get, like, if we have food, we need the food permit, so we occasionally have the health inspectors show up to make sure everything is up to code. We have occasionally had a liquor inspector show up. We have not had any claims against our insurance or issues with our contracts.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, touch wood really hard.
Yeah, really hard, really hard. We got a hand from Lori, so let's see what Lori has to say.
Order. Audio now on mute.
Well, I'll say I really enjoyed the music because I love music. And hearing these people play is like, you can really tell that they really enjoy what they're doing, and all the different horns and everything you could hear in the music that was played this evening. So it probably took up a lot of room for all these instruments that they had to bring in to play these 7 instruments. Must have taken up a lot of room for it, because they sound like they're big instruments to me. And stuff.
Well, certainly a cello is not a small instrument. That's
no, it's not. It's not. And so yeah. I like music like that. So it's really, had a lot of good, upbeat to it and everything.
That's awesome, Lori. And it also looks like we have a hand from Rita.
Okay. It just told me low battery. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, Rita, we gotcha.
Okay, good. Okay. So one comment, which is I absolutely love the music. And I have a question. And that is the tapestries, what are they made of? You said tapestries lots of times, but I don't think you said, are they woven? Are they painted on? Is it like, is it made out of silk, wool, cotton? What kind of material is it? Do you know?
Pawan, do you want me to tackle this since I did all the insurance stuff?
Yeah, please.
It's horsehair canvas for the most part, which is actually an old type of canvas used for dressmaking, for really, really like firm, strong canvas. It's quite thick. There's acrylic and gouache paint, as well as beading, like hand beading sewn onto it, like on the shirt that the woman was wearing on the headpiece had like jewels on it. So yeah, and there was pieces of cotton as well, and cotton thread used for a lot of that.
Right.
So
okay.
it wasn't the canvas itself is woven, but it isn't woven in terms of a traditional tapestry where the artist, the artwork is woven into the warp and weft. Can you tell him it? So
I got it.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. That helps. Thank you.
Thanks, Rita. It's a great question. See, and you thought insurance was boring. Turns out you know the details of something that somebody really wants to know, which is so fantastic. Yeah, I love that.
Who knew?
I'm curious for each of you, if you had to pick your darlings, right? What were favorite moments from the festival for each of you? Shall I pick on one of you to start? Anoushka, you want to start?
Sure. I've just been scarfing a little bit of a sandwich off camera. So excuse me. But yes, I mean, there were so many moments that were so affirming and just wonderful. But really, I would say, like, at the opening, when, we saw how big our audience was, we have a joke now forever among our staff. Our producer was planning for 50 people because she wasn't looking at the full guest list, and then 350 people showed up. So just to see that kind of support from community, especially when it's like new leadership, a lot of a new team right after, coming out of like transitioning back to being together in public spaces in the way that we kind of had before the pandemic. It was just really wonderful to see how much like trust and anticipation and just openness there was every night with, people really showing up. I mean, anyone who puts on an event in this city, it's terrifying. You never know how many people are going to come out. Vancouver is not an easy city to get people to come out to things. So that was, yeah, that just kept happening over and over. And it was really, really wonderful, really affirming. Yeah.
Melissa, how about for you?
Oh, geez. For me, there's probably two. I would also say opening party, just because everybody who walked in the door was so warm and welcoming. And I mean, I'm staff. I'm supposed to be the welcoming one because I'm right at the front door. But everyone was like, "I'm so glad to see you. It's so nice to be back," and everything. It felt like family reunion, except for not toxic people who question your life choices at the dinner table. So really lovely, friendly people, and everyone is dressed to the nines. They're wearing like traditional clothing from their culture, and we're not just talking South Asian, but people in like Nigerian traditional dress, and like Chinese and Vietnamese, and like every part. I was dressed in Ukrainian dress, and that was amazing. And the other one was the last few minutes of closing party, where pretty much all of the guests had gone. And it was actually one of our staff who was the closing DJ, because she DJs on the side. And they were spinning the last tune, and it was just basically the staff partying on the dance floor for the last couple of minutes before we closed everything out. And it was just such a lovely moment that we're not all like, screw this, let's go home. It's like, let's celebrate and have fun. And it's very much that kind of organization.
Pavan, favorite moment or moment?
Yeah, that was actually the one I would say too, is that epic dance floor moment towards the end of a festival when the whole team is tired and stretched, and yet we still found time to dance and celebrate together. It takes everything to build a festival. I think you don't really know what it takes until you do it. And so I often tell folks, like, it's quite an undertaking to try to put on multiple events during a stretch of time with small teams and limited resources. And it's just such a proud moment when you can be with your team on the dance floor at the end of it all and be smiling and dancing and really enjoying it. So yeah.
And maybe you can touch a little bit on some of the accessibility initiatives that Indian Summer Festival was working on this year.
Yeah, Melissa, you want to take that one?
Sure. Accessibility is something we take really seriously, and there's a lot of things that we do every year. One of the ones is reserved seating. We do advanced seating for anybody who wants it. I want to seat close to the bathroom, close to an aisle, right up the front, whatever. You can just come in early and sit whatever is easiest for you, or we'll reserve something. You can get a free companion ticket if you are coming and need a companion to increase your accessibility. We offer digital programs, as well as most of our materials are available online for people who use screen readers. We do offer ASL translation on request, though we haven't had any requests for that in quite a while. And pretty much all of our venues are some form of wheelchair accessible. I have a mobility disability, so I'll go in with my scooter and do an audit of the places. And we use other audits as well. So we want to make sure there's facilities available for everybody. We do education with our staff, with our volunteers about accessibility, things like don't touch somebody's mobility aid, don't pet somebody's guide dog, treat somebody like a person and not like their disability, don't assume somebody's needs, all that kind of stuff. And this year was the first year we introduced live captioning. So for all of our spoken word events, two of which you heard, the Rajni, Perera in Conversation event and Punch Up, there was one other, which was the talk that Anoushka was talking about between Harsha Walia and Anjali Appadurai, also had captioning, which is a new system that has the speakers are speaking into a microphone. It goes into a piece of hardware, which will output either onto a screen or we'll send it to your smartphone. We elected to have it on smartphones, so you could just. Sorry, I have two dogs here and they are playing. They are not fighting. I swear. If you hear growling,
dog-friendly space, Melissa.
Totally. I love dogs. Yeah, they're having a good time. It just sounds like they're killing each other. So when you get in, you could scan a QR code and it would take you right to the website, and it would have live captions that you could scroll through as people talked. And it had a pretty good accuracy of being able to follow everything that was being said. With comedy, there's a bit of a timing issue, but nevertheless, it was a huge success and we got really good feedback on it. And we're going to be making it available to basically all the arts groups in Vancouver who want it. So hopefully we can
I think
add
that's
that.
a really lovely offer to know that you have this equipment and you're only probably going to use it for 10 days out of a year. That
Exactly.
are other arts organizations that want to test it out before they buy it, or just to be a part of the pool of increasing accessibility, that they can come knock on your door.
Absolutely. And the last thing we did is we had staff and volunteers wear pins that if they spoke a language other than English, they could wear a pin that says, I speak Punjabi, Marathi, ASL, French. Did I get Gujarati? No, I didn't get Gujarati. I was working on it. Tamil, all sorts of different languages. And we saw all sorts of conversations happening with people who were like, oh my goodness, here's this language I haven't got to speak in a while. And they could just engage with those people more easily in the language of their choice.
It's great. It's great. Any level of accessibility is appreciated. And I hope that, you know, for every festival or arts organization that there's a continuous build, right? Like, these are the things we do this year, and how do we build on that moving in years forward, and all sorts of things. So I wish you success with the accessibility continuum journey, right? You know, there's no finish line at the end that we go, woohoo, we're accessible.
Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't quite work that way. It is work we're asked to do for a lifetime, right? As is much of the work that we're asked to do in allyship. Yeah.
And we're super open to feedback. If there is something that you or someone you know could use to make it more accessible, please let us know, because you know, you can never be aware. No one can live with every disability. So it's always good to know, you know, my disability is different than someone else's and needs different accommodations. So if there's something that we could do better, we're super open to hearing that.
I might send an email to you. I have a couple of thoughts. Nothing was a deal breaker for me, I'll just say, but yeah, if you're interested in some feedback, I'm always happy to share.
Absolutely.
Well, friends, I say we get to a prize draw this evening. What do you think? Yes, we've got two fabulous CDs. We've got Sarah in the wings here, and Sarah's got the names of all of our participants in the magical vessel of some sort. And we'll get Pawan and Anoushka each to pull a name. So when Sarah appears, or are you just a voice in the beyond?
Oh, do you want me to spotlight myself? I can.
Not necessarily. A voice in the beyond is fine.
I'll just be a voice.
Okay.
You go to your gallery view. Okay. Who's gonna go first?
I'm gonna. Well, we'll go in alphabetical order, so that means Anoushka. All right. You and I, born with the A names, we're always at the top of the list.
Oh.
So Anoushka, whenever you want Sarah to pull a name, just shout out any word.
Drum roll. Go ahead and pull a name, Sarah.
Okay. I have Carrie Kajewski.
Carrie Kajewski! Yay, Carrie! Awesome. All right, Pawan, it's your turn.
All
You
right.
drum roll?
Summer!
Summer!
Okay, I got April Gully.
And April, wonderful. Carrie and April. So we're going to send your addresses to folks at the Indian Summer Festival, and they're going to send you each a CD in the mail. So thank you very much. That's awesome. Thanks, friends, so much for this. It's really great to have you in the space. I know it's only once a year, but it's really great to have you on the space. Make sure you say hi to Laura June for us all. I know that she was feeling like kind of sad that she would be missing it out, but there's been some transition in curatorial stuff and whatnot. So it's always great to have new friends in the space as well. So just a big thank you from the VocalEye community for sharing all of this lovely work at the Indian Summer Festival this year.
Thank you, Amy, for being so gracious and generous in the space. And thanks for letting us take a little time here to share a little bit about what we love to do, and for being just so, yeah, we just feel really honored to be able to share this work with your community. And so we hope to hear from folks and reach out. We're always around. Thanks, Amy, for the incredible work you've done. I know you mentioned off the top you haven't been feeling 100%, so I'm in admiration.
I'm here and I miss my community, so I'm happy to be here tonight. Awesome. This is lovely, and best of luck as you start in the next handful of weeks to curate next year's festival. Awesome.
Yeah.
VocalEye, vocaleye.ca. Special thanks to our funders, the Canada Council for the Arts, the British Columbia Arts Council, the Province of British Columbia, and the City of Vancouver.